students at Avogadro's number from 4 to 6 p.m. There's going to be free food. It's going to be activities. You can win prizes. It's going to be fun. You can talk with other people that are interested in water and learn about what's going on in the CSU community. We'll have some just very casual remarks at 5, and the rest of the time it's just networking. So it's a really good opportunity to meet other people at CSU that are working in water. Also, the Colorado Groundwater Association student networking event is tomorrow in Golden, and that information is up on Canvas if you want to go to that. Really good opportunity there as well. Okay, so any questions? I also put up the final paper assignment on Canvas. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that, but any questions or general comments before we introduce our speakers? Okay, so I'm very excited. Today we're going to focus on water utilities, and we're bringing in folks from our very own city of Fort Collins. So Jeremy Wolf and Richard Thorpe. Jeremy Wolf is, and actually I think Richard's going to talk first. And Richard, I don't have your titles here. You are the watershed project manager?
Watershed program
manager for the city of Fort Collins. Hold on one second. I'm going to pull this information up so I have it correct. Okay. So Richard actually went to CSU. He has a BS degree in fishery biology and an MS in entomology. He's been a surface water quality professional for more than 20 years, including time working as a laboratory manager at CSU, an environmental consultant, and for state surface water quality regulatory agencies in both North Carolina and Wyoming. He's been the watershed program manager for Fort Collins Utilities since 2017. So thank you, Richard, for being here. He's going to start us off. But I'll also go ahead and introduce Jeremy. Jeremy Wolf is the Senior Director of Integrated Water Operations for Fort Collins Utilities. He grew up in Colorado Springs and has lived in Colorado most of his life. He's a bachelor's degree in business administration in 2006 and a master's in environmental policy and management from the University of Denver. He's a certified Colorado water professional with A-level certifications in wastewater treatment and industrial wastewater treatment. He has worked in water operations since 1998 when his water career began as a commercial diver in the Gulf of Mexico. Since then, he's spent his career as a water operator and manager in commercial and municipal environments. He's been with Fort Collins since 2023. So I'm excited to have both of these representatives here today because there's a lot of different jobs at water utilities. And so they're going to talk about just a few of those, but water utilities are an interesting profession because you can cover so much ground and they're based locally. So you can work within your own community and they have great jobs generally. All right, so pull this all down and we're going to have Richard, and you should be good to go.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be back on campus, especially at Warner College. This is my roots are here. And it's funny, this building looks so different on the outside, but it's very similar on the inside to what it was when I was here, and probably decades before that. So again, my name is Richard Thorpe, and I'm the Watershed Program Manager for Fort Collins Utilities. The purpose of my presentation is really, I'm going to start out with describing my career path at a high level. Then I'm going to move over to describing the Watershed Program's approach to protecting the city's source water supplies. And then I'm going to finish up with some career-related advice. Oop. Might have to click. Slight pause. So I got to do this.
No, you can do this. It was just like clicking into the notes or something.
Okay, right on. Okay, so again, I might. Yep. So I attended CSU and got my bachelor's in fisheries biology and completed that in 2001. After that, I took a job in Will Clemens' ecotoxicology lab, managing his lab for a little more than a year. And then after that, I started my master's in entomology, and it was really more of a master's in entomology was the degree that you could get in bioag and pest management. I'm not really an entomologist. I'm more of a stream ecologist. I know a lot about bugs that live in rivers and how water quality might impact bugs. And so that's the gist of my background besides the fisheries. After I finished my master's, I moved on to a short stint in environmental consulting with AECom here in Fort Collins, and then decided that wasn't for me. And my wife and I were just ready for a new adventure. So we ended up moving to North Carolina. I worked for the Department of Environmental Quality there, out of the Raleigh office for the state as an aquatic biologist doing bioassessments all over the state, swamps and Piedmont, mountains, all over. It was awesome. But I missed the West, ended up coming back this way, got a job with the Wyoming DEQ, or Department of Environmental Quality, running their surface water quality assessment program. And I was there for about 10 years. And then I applied for and got my current position as watershed program manager with the city in 2017. I've been with the city ever since. All right, so the watershed program is a small team of 3 full-time staff. And from right to left in this photo is Jared Heath, who's been with our program for a little more than 11 years. Diana Schmidt is the new kid on the block. She's been with us for about a year now. And then I've been managing the program again for about 7 years. So a source watershed is essentially just a watershed that provides raw water for water treatment. And our program's mission is to monitor and protect the city's source water supplies and the overall health of the Cache-la-Poudre River watershed. So this map is of the Cache-la-Poudre River watershed, and the city's 2 primary source water supplies include the main stem of the Poudre River watershed from Gateway Park upstream, and because Gateway Park is where our Poudre River drinking water intake is located. And so this area is shown in yellow in the map. And then secondly, the Horsetooth Reservoir watershed, which is shown in orange just to the left or west of Fort Collins. And the Horsetooth Reservoir is a terminal reservoir on the Colorado Big Thompson system. Although we don't treat any water from the North Fork Poudre, which is shown in blue in the top of the map, we still consider it to be part of our source water supplies because reservoir releases from Halligan Reservoir, which is owned by the city, can be used in surface water exchanges to help augment our water supplies over in the main stem. And then lastly, both the Upper Laramie and Upper Michigan Ditch watersheds, which are shown in reddish orange in the lower left, are also part of our water supplies due to the presence of transbasin diversions that move water from those watersheds over into the Upper Poudre. All right, so EPA describes green infrastructure as landscape features that filter and absorb stormwater where it falls. And managing green infrastructure is a common strategy in the context of stormwater management in urban environments. And the reason I bring this up is because the watershed program takes a similar approach whereby we look to protect our source water supplies by really looking to protect the broader watershed that that water is actually coming out of. And so we have that, we protect green infrastructure as well. So the city's source watersheds continue to provide high quality raw water for water treatment, but protecting the city's source watersheds is full of many different challenges, some of which I've listed out on this slide. For starters, just the sheer geographic scope of these watersheds is quite challenging to work with. The city doesn't own any of the land within, or very little of the land within our source watersheds. And that makes it necessary for us to partner with other land management agencies, private landowners, other watershed stakeholders to get our work done. There's multiple pollution threats. Just about anything you can imagine can end up in the river in our water supply. And so we're always having to roll with the punches to try to mitigate those threats. And I'll get into that more as I move through this presentation. And then the scale and and complexity of the projects and programs to mitigate those threats is also quite complicated. We, like everybody else, face funding and staff capacity limitations, and then all this and a lot more set against the backdrop of an ever-changing climate. Okay, so we use a collaborative approach to navigate these challenges, and this is really my favorite part of the work that our program does. And it's deeply rooted in our culture and the workflows within our program. Our approach is founded first and foremost in building and maintaining trusting relationships. It's all about establishing and maintaining strong communication with our partners. We partner our team with folks both across our organization and then regionally as well. We have tons of different partners that we work with to get our work done. And we work with partners to engage in integrated planning and prioritization for projects that cost share collaborative projects and programs that we implement together. And this approach improves resource efficiency, and it allows us to and it fosters greater overall watershed stewardship between us and our partners for these shared resources. So in 2016, the watershed program, with assistance from the Colorado Rural Water Association and the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, developed a Poudre River source water protection plan. And essentially the plan helps us address our mission by guiding our source water protection activities. And specifically, the plan identifies the prominent source water pollution threats within our source watersheds. It ranks those threats from high to low based on their relative risk to our water supply. And as you can see in this table here, it has the threats that were identified in the 2016 plan, as well as their relative ranking. And then lastly, the plan includes a range of different best management practices that our staff can use to help mitigate the risk of these threats to our water supplies. And as you can see, wildfires and algae blooms top the list, followed by the risks associated with flooding, roads and highways, as well as septic systems. It's important to note that although algae blooms and wildfires are both high priority, really most of our focus is on protecting our water supply infrastructure, our water supply, and the quality of that water supply from future large-scale wildfires. That's the bulk of our efforts, because wildfires are by far the biggest risk. So nearly a decade after its initial development, our Poudre source water protection plan is due for an update. And rather than develop another Fort Collins focused plan, our watershed program decided to instead opt to collaborate with other regional water providers that share our source watersheds. And those other entities are listed on this slide. Some of the advantages to collaborating on the source water protection plan include that it'll help us clearly delineate the boundaries of each water provider's source watersheds within these broader watersheds, and knowing where two or more water providers' source watersheds overlap helps us understand where there's opportunity to collaborate on projects. So that's going to be really, really helpful for us. It'll also increase alignment between the 5 water providers in terms of what the predominant threats are, how we should prioritize them, and then best practices that are best suited to mitigate those risks. This plan is going to link to, we've been collaborating with these folks for a long time on other projects. This plan will link to current and future projects and programs, and so it'll make this plan highly implementable. We'll have a range of different metrics in there to further evaluate the effectiveness of collaborating together on this plan rather than going it alone. And then lastly, this approach will ultimately just lead to more cost share collaboration between the 5 water providers. So this planning effort is we have a $150,000 budget to fund development of this plan. We're planning to hire a consultant to help us with this. $50,000 of that 150K is coming from a grant from the Colorado Water Conservation Board that we were awarded recently. Another $50,000 is coming from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And then the remaining $50,000 is being split evenly between the 5 water providers. So essentially Fort Collins utilities customers are getting $150,000 source water protection plan for $10K by using this approach. All right. So I'm going to use the remaining time that I have with you today to provide a handful of examples of source water protection projects and programs that our program's either leading or otherwise has our hands in, otherwise is engaged in. First up, the Michigan Ditch is a critical water supply infrastructure for the city of Fort Collins, owned by the city of Fort Collins and located near Cameron Pass, just southwest of Cameron Pass, to be exact. The ditch is a transbasin diversion that moves water from the upper Michigan River watershed, which is in the North Platte Basin, over into the Poudre, which is in the South Platte, hence transbasin diversion. Fortunately, the ditch was not impacted at all by the Cameron Peak fire of 2020 or East Troublesome or the Mullen fire either. It was a rough year for folks in water utilities, but we weren't impacted. The ditch was not impacted at all. And our program took this as an opportunity to work to reduce the risk associated with future wildfires on this important infrastructure. So specifically, we've been collaborating with several partners since 2022 to develop a multi-phase wildfire mitigation plan to protect the infrastructure up there. And there's a couple of pictures of what that looks like. There's the ditch itself and one of the historic cabins that are used by ops staff to protect the infrastructure, protect our water supply, and protect the quality of the water supply as well. Phase 1 of the project is slated to kick off in 2025, and it's going to include about 150 acres of targeted forest thinning in forest adjacent to the ditch. It's very steep country, as you can see in that photo over on the right. And so we're going to be using a combination of tethered and helicopter logging. Tethered logging is where equipment's lowered on heavy gauge chains and cables downhill slopes to do the logging. And then heli logging is where helicopters help pull logs out or pull trees out. So this phase 1 of this project is going to cost about $1.5 million, $500,000 of which is in the form of a Colorado State Forest Service grant that we were awarded in early 2024. The Colorado State Forest Service pitched in an additional $500,000 in congressionally directed spending, and then the watershed program will be providing $500,000 in grant match. Okay, so my next example is actually 2 interrelated projects. The first is a project being led by the Larimore Conservation District to help restore a degraded section of the South Fork Poudre up near Pembry Park following the Cameron Peak fire. And specifically, this project will use what is called process-based restoration structures, which are meant to mimic the work of beavers. Once these structures have recently been installed, but in the coming years, we're expecting the water table along the stretch of the Poudre to raise. We're expecting the riparian vegetation to improve dramatically. And then from a source water protection perspective, this work will help us to trap sediment up in the watershed and keep it out of the lower reaches of the watershed and our water supply. So it has a really strong source water protection aspect as well. One of the cool things about this project is that a second project located nearby, which is a forest thinning project on 50 acres being led by the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed, we'll use wood from the forest thinning project they have used that wood to build these process-based restoration structures. So it's one of the few examples, or I think it's the only example I can think of where we've coupled projects like that. So the overall cost for the project so far is a little over $200,000, and our program has paid $33,000 of that. All right, so the Upper Poudre Water Quality Monitoring Program has been in place for greater than 15 years and includes the partners listed on this slide. The purpose of this program is to monitor water quality trends in the polluter to help meet current and future water treatment goals for the partner utilities. We have study locations throughout the North Fork, the main stem, and the South Fork polluter, and they're shown as orange dots in the map on the right, where we monitor a wide range of physical, chemical, and biological parameters using both discrete and real-time monitoring. So the data are reported out in a tiered series of reports ranging from seasonal updates each year in spring, summer, and fall that are meant to provide snapshot of watershed condition and are meant to be accessible to anybody in the public. The next tier up is annual reports where we look at short-term trends from the following year's data. And then the last highest level of reporting is long-term trends, where we look at the previous 5 years of data compared to our data baseline. Okay, so in summary, monitoring and protecting the city's source water supplies is very important for us to continue to provide reliable, high quality water to our customers. And we use a collaborative approach to protect our source watersheds, and this is really the key to our work and our success. I shared just a handful of plans, projects, and one program with you today, but this is just the tip of the iceberg for what we have our hands in. We collaborate a lot, but nevertheless, it highlighted nearly 20 collaborative partners and about a 2-to-1, actually more than a 2-to-1 return on investment for our customers. So it's a big deal. This process is working for us. And this approach has allowed us to better leverage our resources, obviously, and it's allowed us to improve the scope and the reach, the scale and the reach of the work that we can do. And then lastly, this approach has again led to better overall watershed stewardship and watershed health. All right. So I've been asked to provide a little bit of career advice to you today to wrap up my presentation. And so the first thing that I would suggest is that, and this took me 15 years of my career to figure this out. And I don't think that so take this with a grain of salt, but I think it's really important to do some soul searching, to really think about what makes you tick and what makes you happy, what you're passionate about, and what you're going to want to do when you come to work every day. And I would recommend continuing to look for that until you find it. And when you do, you're going to know, because you're going to have fun when you go to work every day. I get fired up when I go to work. It's really fun. Fits me really well. Secondly, there's a lot of technical skills that you can sharpen: GIS, R, coding skills, all kinds of technical skills that you can bone up on. And that's a great thing to do. But I would also recommend that you place equal weight on sharpening your soft skills. I just talked about how the key to our success in our program is building relationships, being patient with people, communication. It is, and then working with all kinds of personalities. You work with people, sometimes you don't like everybody that you run into. That doesn't matter. You just have to push through it and keep your eyes on what you're trying to accomplish. And if you can do that, I think you'll be more successful. It's definitely helped me be successful. And then lastly, I would highly recommend working to be a leader in whatever you end up doing and at whatever level you're doing it at. And leaders are those who bring energy to their teams and elevate their teams. And so that's all I have for you. Turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Richard. And while I'm trying to get this to work, let's take a few questions for Richard if you have some.
Absolutely. I like my work.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Helps make the watershed better. I think it's kind of barriers.
I don't think it's a barrier at all. I think part of what we're able to accomplish with our program, with all the collaboration, all the partnerships, leveraging resources and all that, part of it is because that we are blessed to work in a watershed like the Pooter. There's a long history of collaboration in the Pooter. We weren't the ones to start it. And I think having a wild and scenic designation on the Pooter does nothing but give people additional pride in the watershed and the river. And so, yeah, it's cool. I think it's a great place to work. Not a barrier. Anybody else?
Any question?
Would you say that costs have not been passed on to, the, for that pay support bonds? From these wildfire projects yet?
That they haven't been passed along? For
There's like a lot of funding from a lot of places.
exactly.
And that's kind of helping like displace this.
Yeah, so Fort Collins Utilities customers pay for part of this. We have two different budgets in our program, one of which is a source water or a watershed protection budget. We use funding. We get, I think right now it's $200,000 a year that we can use, and the idea is to leverage that out. So yes, the customers are paying for that part of it, but then like our job is to take that 200K and then leverage it up to 800 or something like that. I think we put in roughly about $800,000 just to watershed protection projects, and I think we're up to about 3.5 million to $4 million in overall cost for those projects. So, does that answer your question at least partially? I hope.
Probably
And Jeremy might be a better person to talk about rates and.
I mean, any costs that we incur, related to the wildfire that wasn't covered by federal state funding would get passed on to the rate. But Richard's done a great job of getting some federal money to really reduce the amount of those rate increases.
And we just, the reality is we can't do everything. So that with we paid for a lot of mulching with our partners to do post-fire mulching up there in the watershed after Cameron Peak. But it's a big watershed and we can't do everything. And so that's where very strategic prioritization comes in. We have to decide what is the biggest bang for the buck and where do those partnerships exist. And then go from there. But yeah, we just have to, that's just part of it, right? Is you gotta let a lot of it go. We're not gonna fix the whole watershed after the fire. So yeah.
Is there one more question? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Go ahead.
One last thing, we have a seasonal technician position with our program that's going to be opening. We're gonna post it hopefully before the end of the year. And it'll be a maximum of 30 hours per week, April through November. And it'll be a really good opportunity if you're interested. We have a lot of times graduate students that are transitioning, finishing their degrees, and it's a nice position for them to learn a lot and then finish up their degree. So if you know somebody or if you're interested, reach out to me and be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, you can send me the posting too.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Come on up, Jeremy. I think we finally have your presentation. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you can use the arrows or whichever.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Jeremy. I'm the operations guy. So my job is to support all the water operations. As soon as it comes out from our source water, it comes into it starts to begin treatment in a pre-sedimentation basin that's still up in the watershed, and then it makes it down into our water production plants, into our distribution and collection pipes, and then into our wastewater treatment plant where we discharge into the Fossil Creek ditch, which goes to the Fossil Creek Reservoir, which then goes into the Fossil Creek outlet, and then it goes into the Catch-La-Pooter River. So a lot of my job is capital project decision making right now. I started out as an operator, but moved up into management now. My group is about 170 people roughly. So capital project decision making, a lot of that's focused around asset management right now. We're trying to improve our asset management system, so we know what we have and how to take care of it. And then workforce support. I'm always, since I have so many people working for me, I need to keep them happy so they keep doing their jobs well, and they do their job very well. So how I got here, you probably think that picture is random, but I jumped and I was a paratrooper in the Army. That's a picture that I actually took. And then I worked underwater, that in the Gulf of Mexico as a commercial diver for the oil and gas industry. Then from there, I came to Coors, where they actually hired me as a forklift driver. And I managed to, when I got out of the Army, I got my associate's degree from a community college. My background in science and math allowed me to move into the hazardous waste treatment department from being a forklift driver. And then I moved up into industrial waste treatment, which of course has a large industrial waste treatment plant that treats all the brewery waste. But they also have a municipal treatment plant that treats waste for the city of Golden, which is another interesting story that I won't get into. And then I had a lot of education in grad school and certificates and licenses. So just to get into right away, water production, and I'll be candid, but water production and water distribution and collections, not my passion. Wastewater treatment is what I grew up in for more than 20 years. So I am definitely more passionate about that. But if you have questions as I kind of go through here, just hit me up and I'll be more than willing to stop and answer what I know. So it delivers about 8 billion gallons of water annually, 32 full-time employees with laboratory support of 8, and it treats raw water from Horsetooth and the Catch-Laputa River. We do add fluoride for dental health since 1967, when it was added via a ballot initiative from citizens. So yes, water reclamation, the art formerly known as wastewater treatment. And the reason we call it water reclamation now is because it's not just water that we're reclaiming, it's resources. So the water reclamation facility has 2 treatment plants, Drake and Mulberry. They treat a total of 29 million gallons per day, 23 at Drake and 6 at Mulberry. From that wastewater that's treated, so we separate the clean water from the other stuff. And the other stuff goes to land application at Meadow Springs Ranch. That other stuff has a lot of nutrients in it, which allow for the soil to grow. And that ranch is an active cattle ranch. So the livestock there feed on the forage that's grown, but from where the biosolids are land applied. Like I say, Drake discharges into Fossil Creek Ditch, and then Mulberry discharges into the Poudre River. So connecting those 2 facilities is our collections and distribution system. You can see here we've got quite a lot of pipes, hydrants, manholes, and employees that are working in that. So our water and wastewater systems are a little odd because our wastewater and water service areas are different from the city limits of Fort Collins. So there is oftentimes confusion when we get water complaints from people outside that are in the city limits of Fort Collins, but not in our service area. And again, I have responsibility for stormwater as well. This is a stormwater bore that's happening. Well, it was just completed on the Oak Street stormwater project. For those of you that aren't familiar, it's a large stormwater project to help alleviate some flooding in the Old Town area. Major project. I believe it was $38 million. So it's stormwater is classified by the EPA as being the largest contributor of pollution into water supplies. This tunnel boring on Oak Street is 78 inch in diameter, 460 linear feet, and that was 30 feet deep. And I had to look this one up because I didn't know, but anybody know what the difference between a retention and a detention pond is? I'll tell you, but I got to read it first because I already forgot. Retention ponds hold water permanently, and detention ponds allow for a slow release. Okay. So water treatment and water production are all about protecting human health. This is kind of a diagram of how it's done. I always like to refer to it as there's basically mechanical and chemical, and then some hydraulic means of treating water. We add a chemical to help flocculate and grab those particles so that they can settle out, and we remove the solids. And then the clean water flows into disinfection and some additional chemical treatment with fluoride, fluorine dioxide. And so that's how the water treatment process works. It's a lot more complicated than I had just described to you, but so in water treatment, if jobs in water treatment are like laboratory support, we have operators, we have mechanics, then we have managers at various different levels. We also have process specialists. So there's a number of different jobs in water treatment. And then we go into the distribution system. The distribution system is a lot of miles of pipe. Our crews are on call 24 hours a day to respond for repairs. Those repairs are regulated. And so our field operators are required to be certified as Colorado water professionals in both collections and distribution. And I failed to mention our water treatment plants are also required to be certified water professionals for water treatment. And they are also required to be certified at the highest levels because all of our systems are classified at that highest level. So into the collection system. This is my field operations manager, Andrew Gingrich. He is awesome. If you ever even see him, just walk up to him and say hi, and he will chat your ear off, no doubt. So into the collection system, so water goes into people's houses and then it comes out way, way grosser. And so the collection system is what we have. This is a little different from the distribution system in that it's not pressurized. It's just a flow through pipes. So that allows us to do a little bit of extra work to inspect those pipes. We'll run ROVs up in there to inspect the pipes and see the condition and make repairs and clean outs as needed. We have an average of 9 blockages that are cleared annually. And that is primarily due to flushable wipes that combine with fats, oils, and greases and make a big gross mess. So in order to prevent that, remember the 3 Ps, pee, poo, paper. And then Andrew's daughter came up with another P, puke. So college students should know well, right? Okay. And then moving on, I just have this short video. This is a notorious London fatbird, which is what those congealed wipes wind up being. It is 130 tons. It was 820 feet long. It took them 3 weeks to clear. It costs over $1 million a month to clear blockages in London. And this one was so, I don't know quite how to describe it, but I'll just say cool. The London Museum wanted a piece of it, and there is a piece of it in the London Museum. Okay, so this is a commercial diver. He is not diving in the Gulf of Mexico, but in a wastewater treatment plant. And I think that I know everything about too is just hilarious because he actually said it. This is a snapshot from a video, and he said it in an Australian accent, which I think added to the humor. So it was quite humorous. Okay, and so the Drake Water Reclamation Facility, wastewater treatment is more complicated than water treatment. There's a lot more involved. There's a lot more energy required. There's a biological component to wastewater treatment that is absolutely critical to have. Water treatment does not have that wastewater or that biological component. And so here you have, in the biology happens right here. And it's sad that it's smaller because it's the biggest part of what the wastewater treatment plant does. The anaerobic basin removes phosphorus, your anoxic basin removes nitrogen, and then your oxygenation basin is intended to remove carbon, or what we call BOD, which is biochemical oxygen demand. So to be a water or wastewater operator, it doesn't require you to have an education to be in the field, but it really helps because understanding math, chemistry, and biology are really good to help you run the process and pass the tests. And the tests are difficult. And I would just like to also mention that if you're interested in getting in the water operations or the water industry, a certified water professional certification will help you a lot. We have had engineers that came out of CSU and they reapplied at the plant, and they started out there as an operator, went to CSU, got their engineering degree, and we've hired them back just as fast as you can, because they are few and far between where you have that level of education and the certifications to go with it. Again, we're talking about mechanical, gravity, chemical, and biological. We discharge into disinfection is what we use rather than chlorine or chemicals, to make sure that we are neutralizing all of the remaining virus or bacteria in the system. And then we discharge into those two areas. There was something missing. Oh, here we go. We have the dewatering. So dewatering is a separation process. As we pass through all the, so from the oxidation basin, we actually go into another process that's not listed here. Oh, no, it is. So we go into the anaerobic process. That is another biological process, and it's very important because that one is generates biogas, which is how another resource that we can reclaim. So from there we go to dewatering, which are these huge centrifuges. The anaerobic process takes those solids, and by generating that biogas, it reduces the volume of solids by 40%. So extremely important to just reduce volume, and also important for the resource reclamation. Okay, so this is the only slide I have that's all text. My apologies. And I won't go into it because I've already talked a lot about it, but I had mentioned the biological components, and then BOD. That's a really interesting component. We are regulated on BOD, what we can discharge. We measure what comes in, so we can, because that's required for us to report. So BOD is a biochemical oxygen demand. Oh man, I had it on the other slide. So the biochemical oxygen demand is an extremely sophisticated test. Being a lot of sarcastic. It was developed in 1907 by the UK Royal Commission on Sewage Disposal. They determined at the time that 30 grams per milliliter was safe, which is still what we use today. And the reason that it was developed, the reason that it's a 5-day incubation time to do the test. The reason that it's 5 days is because that's the time it took for waste from the city of London to reach the river on the Thames, or to reach the ocean on the Thames River. So like I say, extremely sophisticated, not at all totally out of date. But there are other processes now, like total carbon, total organic carbon, chemical oxidative demand, that are much more quick and effective. So Meadow Springs Ranch, again, Class A, the biosolids that are applied there are classified as Class B, which is good for application on agricultural crops that are not they do not have roots, like onions or potatoes. Class A biosolids can be applied on anything. So the biggest thing that we have for concern right now with biosolids is PFAS. Is everybody familiar? Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Hey, that was impressive. So PFAS is ubiquitous in the environment. It's been produced by industry since the 50s or earlier. Wastewater plants do not generate PFAS. Important to remember. So the resulting of the treatment plant is what you see here is release discharge directly into the Tweeder River. This is at a time of like peak summer, so low flow in the river, a lot of return flows from agriculture coming in there. But you can visually see that the water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant is cleaner than the water that's actually there. So despite that water already being cleaner than what's in the river, some of the biggest challenges that we face are new proposed nutrient and temperature limits that will require advanced treatment and major capital investment. Those proposed limits are so low that drinking water plants don't have to meet that level of reduction. So the solution we feel like is that eventually we're going to connect the discharge of the wastewater treatment plant to the water treatment supply. There's a lot of efficiency there because it's still just very clean water, but the ick factor in the community can be a little much. So there is some regulations around that requiring a communication plan from the state. And additionally, like Richard had mentioned, climate change is a huge thing. Workforce, people knowledgeable and wanting to get into the water industry is a limitation for us. And then the money. People don't want tax increases. They don't want rate increases. And so that's problematic. So communications is another job that you can get in the water industry and tell everybody how important we are. So how do you get in? Have a passion for water. Education is really great, but it's not required, especially at the lowest levels. Ask a lot of questions, show that you're interested. Know how to work as part of a team, but I worked nights for 15 years by myself. So I was an individual contributor for most of that time, but I also needed to be able to communicate to my peers what was happening on that shift. Enjoy working outside. Most water jobs are outside. Even for Richard's job, he's out sampling in the watershed frequently. Our lab techs do the same thing. Water and wastewater treatment plants both have buildings that are disconnected. The wastewater treatment plants are oftentimes totally exposed to the elements. And so that's kind of it. And then I'll just give you one more picture of me. This is my last day at Coors Brewing Company. I was getting ready to do a confined space entry to inspect a equalization tank for an anaerobic process. It was falling apart, by the way.
I have a question.
Okay.
But in the water, the effluent that's released back into like the Poudre River, for example, are those flows part of someone else's water rights?
Yes. And Richard might be able to answer because water rights are way complicated.
It is very complicated. It's not.
No.
Jeremy and I are like, oh, geez. We have a whole program for folks that do the water accounting. Yeah, so just be kind of.
It is, the water that does go back in is definitely part of somebody else's water rights. It is also a legal obligation that we have, but that is about all the detail I know about it. Yeah, exactly.
So how would that, if you were to start reusing, your effluent essentially come back as drinking water, you'd have to make some changes to that legal structure, I would assume.
Likely. We would need to have a lot of people looking at it closely to figure it out. But yes, and that is some distance off into the future as to where we would connect a drinking water supply to an effluent discharge. Dan.
I thought about pharmaceuticals as an issue.
Yes. So there is a list of what we call CECs. It's contaminants of emerging concern. PFAS was on that list until it became a official contaminant. And yes, pharmaceuticals are definitely on the list. The activated sludge treatment process, which is the process that most wastewater treatment plants use, can reduce some of that, but it's not by design. It's more as an accident. But there is, yes, still discharge of some pharmaceutical byproducts that do wind up in the discharge and are currently not by the wastewater treatment plant. There is some special interest groups. The Poudre Heritage Foundation may send some people out to sample. I think some grad studies have been done and possibly, even beyond that as to where they're looking at that. Cause I know there's some research out there that has shown measurable amounts of chemicals that are causing like elimination of one sex or the other, fish or biological endocrine disruptors.
We also, we sampled for the CDC compound. PFAS, PFAS was not detected, wasn't detected in horse tube, wasn't detected in water. Really actually did the studies. Only place that was detected. But we sampled for pharmaceuticals for those and that's one of that's one of the amazing things about what we have here. It's really not water supplies along the front range. So it's just the polluter is in really good shape. It's not a lot of pollution. And it's sitting very well.
And yeah, when we had the fire, so Richard's group is responsible when we have wildfires like that. Richard's group is responsible for the restoration component of it, the aftermath. Operations deals with it in real time as the fire is happening. We wind up getting a lot of sediment into the river. And so that had the impact of additional chemicals needing to be added, additional residuals that had to be removed. And so there was a cost associated with that. But after the fact, we were waiting to see what was going to happen because there was a lot of concern that we were going to continue to see these cycles. What actually happened was we did see some elevated sediment that continued, but it changed the alkalinity of the water and increased, which increased the effectiveness of our chemicals, which reduced the dosage that we had to add to that water. So, and that was really unanticipated because so much of the watershed burned that it had just a pretty dramatic impact on the water quality.
And then we have a real-time water flow. So we know when there's pollution events, post fire, it's coming down the mountain and gives our operators time to shut off. We have two water supplies. That's our number one. Switch water supplies from water supplies. So we did see a lot of pollution after KMP. So, like for example, if you're familiar with turbidity, so there's a measure of water. 100 MTUs in turbidity. That's our threshold shut. We were seeing turbidity concentrations over after the black hole flow. It actually dragged out. We had shown something. So we're on top of it. That's not, we do see. We have meters in the river that give us all that same pollution. With us the time shut.
Now it's been 4 years. Are there still effects or not much?
Not as much. It's actually the river has recovered so much faster. When we went through High Park Fire in 2012, we got a flood in 2013. And it's scoured a lot of the sediment that was deposited in the river out, cleaned it out. We saw a fairly quick water flow. The Cameron Peak, it's been different, but it's not like thousands. Yes. Once the fire happened, the ash moves out first. It'll take time. It'll take about a decade.
So Sean Chambers joined and he says sources of water like Colorado Big Thompson water are by right a single-use water supply. Return flows after first municipal use must be put back in the river for downriver users who pay into the Northern Colorado Water Conservation District. But other sources of water like ditch company shares allow the municipal water provider to make subsequent uses of the treated water. So depends on the source. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, this, with the sources coming from the other side of the Continental Divide, that water can be used to extinction.
All right, thank you both so much for your presentation. And feel free to follow up with any questions.
Thank you, good job, you too, that's good. But where are we going? Yeah, I guess it's time.
Oh, thank you.
Did everyone sign the paper?
I like.